30 years ago, we never would have imagined being here talking about this. We went from childhood games to energetic alignment. By doing the work, we created better versions of ourselves. Join us, two women sharing their intimate journal entries on their path to consciousness. Get in here, get in here, get in here. If you like our content and you want to hear more, subscribe, like, and comment below. Priorities. Figure out what matters most. Then pressure test those against your values and the core principles you wish to live by. How you prioritize your time will prioritize you. What you invest in grows, good or bad, like it or not, it is what it is.
Priorities. Taking care of myself is a no-brainer. But what about the things around me? Mother Nature allows me to stay alive and breathe fresh air for every second of the day. Shouldn't the unconditional acts of love that she has shown me be reciprocated? I have a duty to honor the soil that I walk on and maintain an equally unconditional level of love and respect for her. My priority is to live a very long, fulfilling life, and I need an earth to do that on. Get in here, get in here, get in here. Hello, and welcome to another episode. Today we're talking about priorities, and this is going to be a good one because I feel like a lot of people are going to resonate with this based on what they give it their attention to. And in your journal entry, you kind of just summed it up. Like priorities is what matters the most to you. What matters the most to you, Zakkiya?
Number one is going to be my kids. My kids are, my top priority. But in the last few years, I realized that I had to become my top priority because I could not take care of my kids if I wasn't first taking care of myself. So like when I put myself first, my entire world shifted and it changed. People that were in my life fell out of my life. The things that I was consumed with changed dramatically because I was focused on me and what felt good for me and felt right for me. My environment and the world around it changed to support that idea. So I feel like I was a better mother because of it. I was a better friend. Some people may think the opposite. People may think that I was no longer a good friend. But that was a sacrifice that I was willing to make in order to invest in me.
Yeah.
So, but when I read your journal entry, because what the listeners really should know is when we plan out an episode, we literally talk about it for a little bit. We're like, okay, here's the theme. And then we each go our separate ways and write our journal entries. So for this week, our journal entries were really different because yours really focused on the environment and Mother Nature. So tell me a little bit more about that.
Okay, so in our discussion though, in our little brief discussion.
Well, I know what I always say. And then when I start writing, I let spirit write for me. And so it sometimes changes. But yes, you're right. I always say like, oh, we're going to do this. And then I go off and write it. I'll be like, oh, Akilah stayed on topic. I did not.
Let's start there.
Right.
I try to stay on. I try to prioritize the topic, Zakkiya.
Okay,
no,
right.
But we said we were gonna, mention priorities because, to talk about things like grounding, to talk about things like sun gazing, and so in that brief discussion, I was like, you know what, my environment, Mother Nature creates all of these opportunities for me. And as much as I prioritize myself, Mother Nature actually prioritizes me first as well by giving me an environment to live in, right? And so I wanted to stay on focus of giving honor to this episode to Mother Nature, to give honor to, just the things around us, the animals, the fresh air, like everything that allows us to just be. We have to honor that. We have to respect it, love it, show it love back. And in addition to talking about, sun gazing and talking about grounding, I also wanted you to talk about the Misa that you did, because I felt like that also gave, honor to the ground and things like that. So that's where I was going with this. But if we want to talk about ourselves, y'all know, look, last week in my life path one
Right.
entry, I said I was self-centered. So I could talk about myself all day, y'all.
Well, okay, I don't think I was being self-centered, but no, I understand what you're
No,
saying.
I'm
I
just
remember why I said I wanted to talk about grounding because grounding was part of my early like spiritual journey. I used to go outside every day, put my feet onto the ground
Mhm.
and stare up into the sun. Every morning after I dropped off my kids, it was like religious. Before I started my like work day, I was outside with my feet on the ground because it very much felt like a charge. I was recharging my body. And that was one place that I used to have a lot of spiritual experiences by doing this. One, I made friends with my backyard rabbit. I would always see the rabbit every morning. And then one time it like hopped its little way right over beside me. And we just sat and we looked in there. And I thought that was such a magical experience. I was like,
Mm.
oh my gosh, I'm a Disney character. Right. But then I also had an experience that I still really cannot explain, but it was again, I was probably grounding for a minimum of 30 minutes, but probably
Yeah.
longer than that because I would drop the kids off at like 7:30. I didn't need to be on my computer until 9, so sometimes I would be out there the entire time. And I remember what I now think may be remote viewing because oh girl, this happened right before you and I went to Chicago.
Mhm.
And I was sitting outside and it was almost like I watched y'all, I know this is gonna sound so crazy, but it was like I watched almost like the Matrix fade away, the illusion of what the world looks like, and I was seeing what I could only describe as an island. It was like picture in a picture. Like I could
Wow.
see the sky, but in this particular area, it started to feel like I saw I don't even know how to describe it. Like I saw wires or something. And then as I tried to focus, I couldn't really focus on it. But if I kind of like off centered focus on it, it was like I was zooming in to see an island. So again, I think there is something very magical about putting your feet directly on the ground because again we know that like mother nature has a frequency and it's releasing it, but we also know there are so many health benefits you all to just putting your feet on the ground,
Yeah.
and like literal studies that prove the benefits of it. So this is not like some like voodoo witchcraft I'm talking about here. I'm actually saying that there are studies that present that show the benefits of actually putting your feet on the ground because it can help with your electrons, the atoms in your it help with blood flow, all these different things. So again, it's something that I was doing every day. I haven't done it as much as I used to, but I do think it is incredibly beneficial. Um, but the reason that for me that I ended up talking about priorities is because I wrote this article or this journal entry after you and I had had a conversation where I randomly called you, I FaceTimed you, and I was like, girl, look what I just found out. And then we were like going back and forth and we were talking, and you were like, girl, you're on fire. You need to write your
Uh,
journal entry.
yeah.
So I was like, okay, you're right. I got a couple minutes before I need to do something else. I'm gonna write my journal entries. And so if you'll notice, our journal entries, if you've been an avid listener, have gotten shorter and shorter. But this one was really much like Spirit was like, this is what you're writing. That's it, nothing more. And it very much was. So I was like, it is what it is, guys, because whatever you prioritize is what will prioritize you.
Mhm.
Whatever you focus on. So if you spend your day focused on other people's drama,
Right.
or distractions or anything else that really does not affect you, you are prioritizing something else other than you. So that's why my journal entry was very much like get focused, stay here. Yeah.
Yeah. No, I totally get that. I think when you talk about like staying focused, the distractions, we already talked about this in so many episodes. The distractions are real, guys, right?
Mhm.
So prioritize you first just to make sure that you are leveling up and staying true to yourself. But um, in, I like to talk about grounding for me, it started when I would just go out and put my feet to the soil. And there was something about it, not that I felt anything, but there was just something about the experience that it was just like Gratitude. Like I've lived so many seasons, right? And I was in my gratitude season at that moment. And I was just so thankful, that in that moment I got to just experience it. I remember hugging trees. Like I went to,
Mhm.
I went to the botanical gardens with my daughter, and I was just in there hugging all the trees. My daughter was like looking around like, Ma, stop.
But
I was getting, I had some kind of draw to these trees. And one of them was, in one of my psychic readings, she asked me, she was like, do you know anything about magnolia trees? And I was like, no. But
mm,
then I thought about it. Actually, we had a magnolia tree in my front yard in my childhood home.
mm,
Um, and so I was in that botanical gardens. They had like a whole row of magnolia trees. Girl, I know them people was looking at me like, this woman's crazy. But I
mm-mm.
was in there hugging all of them and just giving gratitude to all of them.
So, again, there is also a study that supports the idea and the benefits of tree hugging. So, everybody thinks it's a very like hippy dippy thing to do to go out, oh, hug a tree. And especially in Black culture, you think, girl, you out there hugging
Right.
trees, like for
Mhm.
real, for real. So,
I
like,
was.
I think there is definitely a barrier to entry to spirituality for Black people and Black culture because the idea of going to put my feet directly on the ground to sit into sun gaze feels very counterintuitive to the things that like we don't be doing that, y'all. But I
Right.
actually am going to suggest that you do this. But
Yes.
the thing about the trees, and you made me remember this, um, that trees are like an underground network
Mhm.
because their roots are completely spread out all underground, but they can communicate with one another underground. So the fact that you were hugging a tree, I think you're also then like connecting yourself spiritually and physically to the vibration of the earth, right? Because
Mhm.
we also have trees, we have trees that have been around forever, right? Like I actually want to go to the national park just to see these massive trees that you can drive through because I'm like, ooh, what are their roots are so deeply like
Yeah.
deep within the earth that there has to be some type of again communication or connection that I just want to feel because I want to know what it feels like. So again, I don't think it's strange at all that you were in there hugging the trees. Maybe other people did, but I actually think it is a way of communication. um, and if you ever now this might really make people go like, wait a minute, what are you talking about? So if you remember in the Avatar where they had the tree of life, and that's where everything they focused on was at that tree,
Mhm.
right? And it gave the entire forest life.
Yeah.
And they talk about if you ever heard of Rashad Jamal, this is like the beginning days of TikTok. If you listen to one of his lectures and he talks about how a lot of our what we assume to be mountains were once trees. And then I
Mm.
started to see a lot of things where you're like, that actually doesn't look like a mountain. That does look like a tree that was like chopped off at the very top. But that we had these trees of life around our world that have been cut down. The same idea, and like in Avatar, they knew in order to stop the Nahav wait, was it Mojave people? What was it? Whatever they were, whatever their
Mhm.
tribe was, they knew that in order to kill their spirit, they had to kill their tree.
Yeah.
And
Mm.
so, but then that's also where all the vibranium or whatever it was under that tree. And it's that same idea, that system. So like get in touch with nature, guys. I really do think it is a way we know that it can improve mental health. We know that it can and improve internally, like DNA, like so coded and things like that. So I do think there is something to prioritizing being in mother nature. And if you
Yeah.
see a lot, especially in Black culture and in Black neighborhoods, what you will realize there are not a lot of green spaces, there are not a lot of trees, and there are not a lot of color. And we know those things are very important to our overall well-being and also likely very intentional. So like Black people, especially, I need you to go out into nature. I need you to put your feet on the ground. I need you to hug a tree. Whether you think it's crazy or not, when someone's looking at you, just reconnect with the world in our environment because it supports us at every level.
Yeah. Like, do not be embarrassed. I was not embarrassed at all. And, the things around me started to change. But you talked about sun gazing. And so my sister introduced that to me about 3 years ago. And so, in my season of gratitude, I was like, oh, okay, I'm gonna start this sun gazing. So that's the idea of starting at dawn. Like, you're not looking at the sun at 12 noon, people.
No, I
So
told y'all about that.
yeah, I had to get up, and I did. I got up, right when the sun was coming up. I stood outside and I just stared at it for like 20, 30 minutes. Um, but what I also was like reading about is that it regulates your circadian rhythm.
Circadian rhythm.
So, yeah. So I was like, okay, and that circadian rhythm, it kind of biologically tells you when you're supposed to be awake and when you're supposed to sleep, like, something
Mhm.
like that. And so after I did it, I absolutely saw a change in my like my habits of going to sleep and
Sleep
waking up.
pattern.
Yes,
Mhm.
I didn't necessarily have to have an alarm clock anymore because
Mhm.
my body started to wake up at the same time every morning, like, and get up and start your day. Like, don't I had to stop, like, just laying there. You know how we hit the snooze button and we just
Yeah.
kind of lay there? Like, I had to immediately get up, plant my feet on the ground, and start my day. And that's also kind of a benefit as well, for most of us. And I think it helped me in some type of way or another. But um, did you find that the sun gazing kind of helped regulate your sleep patterns?
No, I actually would agree with that because I used to be like, I was never a morning person. Like, I always
Yeah,
needed
yeah,
an
yeah.
alarm to wake up, to get the kids up so I could get them to school and such. And then I guess in the last like few years, I don't need an alarm clock. Like, I will naturally, it's to the point now where I'm like, 5:30, my body is like,
Oh.
wake up, it's time to get
Mhm.
up. I used to be kind of like annoyed by that, like, oh my gosh, I want to sleep in. I have more time. But now I'm like, sometimes I do get up out of bed, sometimes I won't. But again, I think I said it like 2 episodes ago when I did that sun gazing that one January. And I swear I was in communication with the sun, or I was in communication with somebody on the sun,
Yeah.
and they were like, she sees us, guys. And then I started to see all these vibrant colors. And I literally saw a post today that was showing a rainbow in Australia. And they were like, hey guys, look, there are two new colors in the rainbow. And I was like, that's what I saw that day in the sun. And I was like, that to me means that
Mm.
there are more colors in the sky or in the rainbow. It means there are more frequencies on Earth. It's the same thing like the Northern Lights. That is for
Mhm.
me energy and frequency that is in the earth that we're seeing. And we don't, typically we can't see that from where we are, but somehow all of a sudden people are starting to see the Northern Lights in other parts of the world, right?
Yeah.
You remember, I wanted to go to Alaska just so I could see the Northern Lights. That's the
That's on
only
my
reason I
bucket
wanted to go.
list. Yeah.
But now I'm at the point where I have been outside and I'm like, wow, look at those beautiful purples and pinks in the sky. I was like, there's more frequency, there's more vibration on this earth. I think it's because the vibration of the earth is rising. And I also saw something, it only takes 10,000 people to sit in a high vibration to lift the entire world's vibration. It only takes
Mm.
10,000 people. So when you think that like, oh, what we're doing doesn't matter, like, or, me being toxic positivity or whatever the case is, or I'm just going to focus on me, that feels very selfish. We only need 10,000 people, y'all. That's not a lot of people
It's really
to
not.
raise us out of this chaos that we are seeing day to day. And, we think about priorities, even though you guys aren't going to see this, because we tape a little bit ahead of time. But like we just watched, when we're going back to distractions, we just had the Super Bowl, which for
Yeah.
me, I used to absolutely love football. All my boyfriends were football players like growing up. So I was always into football. And then a few years ago, I just no longer could watch it. I was like, I don't know, I'm no longer entertained by it. And it really did feel like a distraction. So I would watch football. If you watch the commercials that are in football, it's food, alcohol, that's it, right? Things to like, again, keep us distracted. And then the entire Super Bowl, everybody's eyes are on there. Everybody's watching these commercials. It feels like programming to me. And then everybody had everything to say about like Kendrick Lamar's performance of the halftime. You either loved it or you either hated it.
Yeah.
Again, but it was all felt very distracting. Like at a point where I was like, I wasn't even really watching the game. I wanted to just watch the halftime because I knew that Kendrick Lamar was going to use this as an opportunity for a message, which he did, that
And
either went over
did.
people's heads or you just totally missed it or you got it. Or if you've been on TikTok after the fact, you see people sharing all these like hidden messages that he had. But for me, a lot of entertainment now feels like a distraction,
Yeah.
feels like programming. And so that's why I stopped prioritizing watching TV and prioritize reading books or
Yeah.
spending time in nature. And so, again, because what you focus on will multiply in your life, good or bad. So if you find yourself focused on drama and bullshit, y'all, you are inviting more drama and bullshit into your life, whether you
Absolutely.
realize it or not. But that is what the law of attraction is. What you put out there, you get back, whether
Sure.
you want it or not. But if you're entertained by drama, if it like thrills you and it gets you excited to be like, girl, guess what I saw? Or can you believe? Somewhere in your world, someone is going to be like, could you believe, or guess what happened to, because you were inviting that in. So that's why I
Right.
say when priority for me was like, prioritize what matters. Align those things with your values so that you can call in more of what it is that you want. And that's kind of like how you change your life.
Hmm.
And for you, like, what would you say? Like, when you really think about priorities, what do you want people to remember about this from this episode?
Um, I want people to remember Mother Nature, period.
Hmm.
Because I think we don't do justice to the world around us, the environment around us that allows us to
And we don't
continue
take
to
care
be
of it. You're
here.
right.
We
Yeah.
don't. And so, and then I also want, I know your priority as a mother are your children. Get your children involved in those things. With Mother Nature. Have your kids out there grounding in the morning with you. Teach them about their circadian rhythm and why it's important to do sun gazing. Even I told you I went to the botanical gardens with my daughter. Like I know she was looking at me like, "Mom, stop hugging these trees." But let me tell you, when there was nobody in sight, what did she go do? She ran and hugged the tree.
You exposed it to her, right? She might not in that moment do it, and she may not, and your kids might not do it. My kids are be like, "Really, mom, we got to come outside and grind," especially when they're sick. I make them go outside, and they're just like, "Mom, I really don't want to." I was like, "I don't
Yes.
care. You got to go outside and you got to do it." And even if they don't like believe in it now, it is creating the very foundation. So, like for me, like growing up, I grew up in a Southern Baptist church, right? Which I am not religious anymore, but I definitely believe in God. But I do credit it to giving me my foundation of the power of God that I now use and utilize in my life.
Hmm.
So it's the same idea. You have to give your children a foundation. They might not believe in it now, but when they're old enough to think for themselves, they at least have been exposed to something so that, like for you and I, you're not waiting to 35 to start to really heal so that you can live your highest and greatest life, because you have exposed them to these ideas. Like you said, when you do yoga with them and all those things or
Right.
meditation, it's just the exposure. They can then find it for themselves because you have exposed them to us.
Yeah.
Unlike us having to have to have a self discovery of all of this. It is taken to our adulthood before we were like, oh, the power of yoga, oh, the power of meditation, sun gazing, grounding. So again, reach back and in helping your children or your nieces and your nephews or the little ones in your life
Hmm.
and exposing them to just a little bit of something so that they can find it for themselves is going to be really important.
Yeah, and I think also for the makeup of our DNA and our biology, a lot of us go to the doctor and get our physical, and what are we always deficient in? Vitamin D.
Vitamin D.
Every last one of us,
Yeah.
like I know
Everybody
it
else. Yeah.
exactly. And so, if you can level up by just sitting outside and letting the sun touch your body,
Hmm.
naturally, why would you, settle to take a pill every month? Cuz that's what I'm doing. I don't mind sharing. I have to take a pill every month to, raise my vitamin D levels. But if I could just prioritize sitting outside, prioritize myself, but also
Hmm.
giving thanks to something very natural that is just occurring and could help me, improve my vitals, right? Like, why not? And so I did want you to talk to them about the MISA because I mentioned that earlier
Oh yeah,
and how
girl.
you
Now I went off a
feed the
tangent.
ground. Yeah.
Yes. And yes, so I did. So I had a mesa, which is basically this idea of where they go into your kind of like your Akashic records and figure out who are the people that show up for you on a spiritual level. Like, so some of it is ancestors, some of it may not be. But one thing that they told me was to feed the ground, and they said to give honor and thanks. So, in some cases, it was something as simple as fresh foods, like fresh fruits and things like that. You could go out and you can, it's basically an offering. The same
Mm-hmm.
way that people go to a church and give an offering, it is giving an offering to Mother Nature. And so I would do that. And I know that means that like the wild animals are probably going to be enjoying those apples and all that, which is again circle of life.
Right.
But my intention when I would go out there and I would put fruit down, fresh water, which can seem like counterintuitive, but again, it is an offering of me saying like, thank you for supporting me. I want to also support you. And
Yeah.
so I'm glad you reminded me to bring that back up, because I do think we do have to prioritize the world in which we live in because we only get one.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think any of us are getting off this earth. As I said, like we're probably not getting out the firmament. So we better take care of the
Mm-mm.
one we're in
We're not
right
going
now.
to Mars, y'all. Sorry.
No, and I believe in Earth, and I also believe that Earth it's cleaning up. Its vibration is being cleaned up, and so we are seeing a lot of things be wiped out, a lot of things being dismantled, and
Mm-hmm.
it can seem scary because it feels like, wait, something bad is going to happen. But we have to remember the very systems that we are watching crumble are the very systems that kept us imprisoned.
Mm-hmm.
So again, I do think thank you prioritizing Mother Nature, grounding, the sun, vitamin D. I do think is incredibly important because I'm only iron deficient in the winter. In the summer and the spring, I have no problem. As soon as winter comes, somehow I am now iron deficient, and I have to re-up my vitamin D because I'm not getting the sun that I would get in the
Yeah.
summertime. So it is all very important. If anything you take from this, make sure you are prioritizing yourself in the environment in which you live in, because we only get one.
Yeah.
Which takes me to this week's quote, which actually comes from Mark Twain, and it literally just says, "To change your life, you need to change your priorities." And that makes sense for when you think of Mother Nature, how you move within your environment, but then also what you prioritize in your life. So if you want change in your life, y'all, you can't keep doing the same things. You can't keep prioritizing the same things. You have to make changes.
Yeah. I agree.
So listen, prioritize the things that matter and they will grow. We love you. Thank you for tuning in, and we will see you next week. Peace,
Bye.
y'all. Until next time, get in here, get in here, get in here.